This is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/FUTURE.
My name is Mackenzie, and I started a GoFundMe for the adoptive mother of a nonverbal autistic child. The mother had lost her job because she wasn't able to find adequate care for this autistic child. So she really needed some help with living expenses, paying some back bills. So I launched a GoFundMe to help support them during this crisis. And we raised about $10,000 within just a couple of months. I think that the surprising thing was by telling a clear story and just really being very clear about what we needed, we had some really generous donations from people who were really moved by the situation that this family was struggling with.
GoFundMe is the world's #1 fundraising platform trusted by over 200 million people. Start your GoFundMe today at GoFundMe.com. That's GoFundMe.com. GoFundMe.com. This podcast is supported by GoFundMe.
Hey, warmer buddy, hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does such great work over at Underdog Fantasy, along with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. We're going to chat it up with him about what we've all been seeing here in the NCAA Tournament thus far. Look forward to the Sunday games in the NCAA Tournament. Additionally, we're going to be chatting with him about some of the NIT games as well, because there are great edges to be had in the NIT, so we're going to be chatting about that and so much more. And if he does think that chalk is going to continue to prevail in the NCAA Tournament, or if we might be seeing some upsets moving forward. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUDET_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. We had ourselves a fun day of college basketball on Saturday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Duke got a good, I would say, 30 minutes from TCU before they pulled away. 81-58 final in this one, and for Duke, they did a nice job in terms of keeping this game under the total as well. There were 72 points on the board in the first half, was looking like it was going to go over, and then TCU just ran out of gas for Duke, one of your best under teams in all of college basketball. 12 overs at 24 unders thus far this season, and for Duke, Patrick Ngangba, he was back in action for them, and he was able to make a nice little bit of an impact in this game. Obviously, Cameron Bruiser was your top player in this game, 19 points, 11 boards, but for Ngangba, he comes in off the bench, gives you 4 boards, 4 assists, did have 4 turnovers as well, as Duke did have 17 turnovers, just 9 for TCU, but dominated the boards 42-25 for TCU, 7 of 24 from 3-point range. They got 18 points out of Micah Robinson, but other than Xavier Edmonds and his 12 points, well, you didn't have too much else from there. The main upset that we saw in the early-ish games was Texas taking down Gonzaga, 74-68, the final, as for Texas, 5 of 15 from 3, and Gonzaga had Graham Ike go off for 25 points, took him 22 shots to be able to get there, though. For Gonzaga, just 4 of 16 from 3-point range. They did win the rebound battle by a count of 34-29, lost the turnover battle 7-5, though, and you had Mitas Vukataitis be able to supply 17 points, along Jordan Pope, 17 points, so we do have a double-digit seed into the Sweet 16. Not so much on the, shall we say, other side of the East region, as Michigan State, they take down Louisville 77-69 the final, and Louisville shot it relatively okay from 3, 13 of 37 from 3 against Michigan State. That's pretty solid. Michigan State even better, though. 11 of 26 from 3. And overall for the season, Michigan State continuing to shoot over 40% from 3-point away from home, while Jeremy Fears did have 5 turnovers in this game. 16 assists out of him. Cohen Carr, he drove this team to victory. 21 points, 10 rebounds, solid double-double. For Michigan State, they do lose the turnover battle 15-11, but for Louisville, just 4 of 6 at the free throw line. Ryan Conwell and Adrian Woolley did their best to combine 38 points. Nobody else on the roster was able to give you double figures. For Texas A&M, they had a good first 10 minutes against Houston, and then they got blown away. They were down 46-28 at the half. Houston gets the job done 88-57 final in this one, and for Houston, they go 8 of 31 from 3, and for Texas A&M, 6 of 24 from 3. Despite that, you still get the over in this game, so that was solid. And for Houston, they were able to win the turnover battle 11-7, and they dominated on the boards 46-29. For Chris Hennick, 17 points, 9 rebounds. Emmanuel Sharp and Milo Suzanne, they combined for 33 big points in this one. Texas A&M, they shoot just 35% from the floor, so for Houston, nice clean domination there, and nice clean domination out of Michigan as well. 95-72, they absolutely blow out the St. Louis Billikens. As for the Billikens, just 10 of 32 from 3. Robbie Avila, not what he was looking for here, 9 points, did have 5 assists, and for St. Louis, they actually win the turnover battle 9-8, but they get dominated on the boards 42-27. For Michigan, 11 out of 23 from 3. Elliot Kadu, Nabari Burnett both go 3 of 5 from 3. So does Yaxel Lendeborg, who led the way with 25 points, and for Michigan, they are also on to the Sweet 16. From the Big Ten as well, Illinois, they are on to the Sweet 16 as they did a really, really good job in terms of not putting VCU at the free throw line. They were able to pull away late in this game as it was 35-28 at the half for Illinois. They get the job done by a count of 76-55. For VCU, they went 2 of 6 at the free throw line. They were able to get a few free throws late, did not cash in. For VCU, they actually win the turnover battle by a count of 11-10, but they got outboarded 45-29. For Illinois, 9 of 24 from 3-point range. Tomislava Visic, 14 points, 11 rebounds to really pace the team. As Andrei Stojakovic off the bench, he had 21 points as well. For VCU off the bench, they did have Terrence Hill supply 17 points, but they weren't able to get much else outside of that. And then we did have some NIT action on Saturday as well. Need to get you guys caught up there as Dayton, they get the job done against UNC Wilmington. This by a count of 80-61 as Wilmington was up early on in this game. Dayton took a 37-33 lead and did not look back as Wilmington 3 of 21 from 3-point against a Dayton team that's really given it up from 3. Dayton also won the rebound battle 38-28. What's supposed to be the forte of Dayton is generating turnovers. They actually lost the turnover battle 11-9, so found that to be very intriguing. As for Dayton, Deshaun Montgomery, he was able to supply the team with 20 big points in this one, so Dayton, they are on to the Elite 8 of the NIT. If you, like me, had the points with Liberty, this one was brutal, as Nevada, they're on to the Elite 8 of the NIT as well. They win this game 73-63 as Liberty, who's been a top 10 team in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. They go 5 of 22 from distance in this one. They did have Brett Decker be able to supply 20 points, and they were up 61-58 with 4:15 remaining. Nevada uses a 15-2 run to close out the game. Nevada wins the rebound battle 42-23. In terms of turnover front, they did lose that by a count of 10-4, but they had on their side Elijah Price, double-double out of him, 15 points, 10 rebounds, and a triple-double out of Corey Camper. 10 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists. Nevada, they only go 4 of 17 from 3, but 19 out of 20 at the free throw line. That closes things out. And then in the last 2 NCAA tournament games, you did have for Vanderbilt a collapse late. They were up 5 points with about 4 minutes and change remaining. Nevada storms back 74-72 the final. Difference here for Vanderbilt, they went 13 of 37 from 3. Nebraska went 9 of 19 from 3-point range, but 11 of 19 at the free throw line. Nebraska, they go just 7 of 10 at the free throw line. Did miss a pair of front end 1-and-1s, but Nebraska, they actually win the rebound battle 31-30. They did lose the turnover battle 12-8, but they were able to get a heroic shot late to be able to get the job done in this one, as a late floater from Braden Frager gives Nebraska their second ever NCAA tournament win. So they're on to that. And for Arkansas, got a little bit hairy against High Point, but they were not the low point. One of the few covers that we saw from an underdog. But Arkansas, they do stave off elimination as Darius Acuff, he came to play in this one. And Arkansas started 8 of 15 from 3-point range. For High Point, with about 5:30 remaining, they were just 9 of 31 from distance in this one. For High Point, they did a solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, but Arkansas, they were able to do a great job in terms of taking care of it as well. So Arkansas, they are on to the Sweet 16 as well. And if you're taking taking a look at trend-wise what we're getting in college basketball right now, it has still been a season for the unders and the underdogs, with the under hitting at about 50.7%, 2,892 unders, 2,812 overs, with the underdogs hitting at about 51%, 2,935 and 2,768 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, we've been seeing quite a few overs, with that High Point versus Arkansas game hanging in the balance. It was 35 overs to 30 under, so 53.8% hit rate to the over, with the underdogs 34 and 32 against the spread in this time span. So right around about 51%. That's where we're seeing college basketball right now. That's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, let's chat it up with our good friend Rob Donaldson of the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets, right here on Coast to Coast, with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
You know, this is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/future.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. For those that have listened to this podcast over the last few years, you know that Rob Donaldson is one of our recurring guests because he does an amazing job over at Underdog Fantasy, the Rob's Best Bets show. So it was really good to see him in person. If you're following us on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB and at G_81 for myself, you've been seeing some of these photos. Rob, a great person in person, does a great job handicapping the sport. He's been having himself a great March. And Rob, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Gray. And likewise, man, it's very similar feelings over here where, you can hear it in my voice. It's been a great time, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of all-day events. But, yeah, man, March has been fantastic. The tournament, a little bit chalky, but, hey, that just means that in the round of 32, the Sweet 16, we are going to see some of those better quote-unquote teams going up head-to-head, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, and truth be told, we're doing this right around about 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, so we're about midway through TCU and Duke and Texas A&M and Houston, and those are relatively close games as of right now. And just how have you taken a look at not just this NCAA tournament, but the last one as well, because it really does feel like chalk has risen to the top thus far, but I do think that there might be some vulnerabilities for a few of these one seeds as well that could cause us to not be exactly what we saw last year.
Yeah, and I think over a 2-year sample size, although it's not a crazy sample size, obviously, it is enough to kind of draw a line in the sand of saying, hey, maybe those kind of middle of the pack high majors, maybe some of those high-end high majors are stockpiling some really good, two different things. Talented guys, experience that, experience in the past used to be, we have a program, we built continuity, we brought this guy in as a freshman and he just never left for the NBA. Well, now you can just go out in the portal and acquire, a Denzel Aberdeen from a national championship team if you're Kentucky. And so I feel like from that standpoint, what it does lead to, and again, we'll see what happens in some of these games like the 9 versus 1s in particular, but I do think the TCUs, the 8s, like a Utah State, for example, they're better than they would be in years past. And so although we're going to see these double-digit lines in those types of spots, I feel like it's a misprice rather than maybe the first round leading to upsets. Maybe the round of 32 is going to be one that really brings on some surprises.
Yeah, perhaps it will be. And I do think that there are going to be some interesting games that are going to be going down on Sunday as well. First half of Saturday, I really wasn't thinking that we would get the fireworks from Michigan State, Louisville, or Michigan versus St. Louis, and that very much was the case. But I do take a look forward to Sunday, and I think that Iowa State versus Kentucky game is so interesting, with Kentucky 4.5 to 5-point underdogs. You mentioned bringing in Denzel Aberdeen from Florida, and for Iowa State, in a typical spot, I feel like this would be a great number to lay with them. But as we know, Joshua Jefferson is dealing with an injury, and I think that that's going to make this a little bit of a closer game than many people expect. And I think that there's a lot of people that maybe aren't taking as seriously as they should the Jefferson injury.
Yeah, and I feel like the line is very reflective of that injury, because this very easily could have been 7.5, 8.5. Now we're staring at a 4.5 number. And there's two sides of that coin, right? We saw Iowa State without Milan Momcilovic early on this season, and they went through their roughest patch. You know, they lost to Cincinnati. They had a rough game at home against, I'm blanking on the team. Texas Tech was in there, I know for sure. But there was a 3-game stretch without Milan that Iowa State just went on a rough losing end against teams that they normally would beat. And for me, okay, I think that says more about Milan Momcilovic, not necessarily the depth of Iowa State. Joshua Jefferson, to me, although he's a great player, is somebody that in this style, in this system, can be replaced in kind of one of these one-off game scenarios. And so I am willing to lay it with Iowa State. It's not my favorite scenario, obviously, not having Jefferson on the floor, but I still feel like at this number, it's more so a discount rather than a very telling line to take Kentucky with.
Yep, and this is going to be played out there in St. Louis, Missouri, so very much helping out Iowa State in terms of the location there as well. And then the other game in that quartet, I guess you can call it, is Miami versus Purdue, with Purdue being a 7.5-point favorite. And I'm really starting to like what I'm seeing out of Purdue. Recognize that the first half against Queens NC wasn't the world's greatest, but feels like they're really putting it together. Now they go up against a Miami team that's rock solid down low, so want to get your thoughts here, because with Purdue, this feels like the best that they've been playing all season, and they were the preseason number one, but I feel like Miami has been one of the nicest surprises in all of college basketball this year as well.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? And sometimes I feel like there are certain teams that fit this style of a mid-major beat-up team, and I think Purdue fits that bill, because you look at what Oscar Clough did in that first round against Queens, it almost felt like he was back in the Summit League, you know, just doing his thing, dropping points, getting boards, bullying people down low. You're not going to be able to do that as efficiently against Miami, and that's going to make, you know, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith much more prevalent than they were obviously in round one. And this is where I definitively feel like there's going to be an upset, because Purdue is one of those teams that all season we've seen both sides of the coin, right? We've seen them get run off their own floor by Iowa State. We've seen them drop some big games that they probably shouldn't have lost all along the way. They struggled against Northwestern at Northwestern. A lot of games where it just didn't feel like we were watching Matt Painter and vintage Purdue. And Miami is a team that a lot of people wrote off even in the first round. Hey, they were playing a true road game in St. Louis against Missouri. Missouri was never really in that thing in the second half. It was definitively Miami controlling that game in the second half there. And to me, that just screams, hey, 7.5 points, take the points. This is not a team that's getting respected in terms of kind of the public opinion. And also when you're looking at Purdue, yes, they just won a Big Ten title. They beat Michigan. They looked pretty definitive in the second half against Queens, but this is a very susceptible 2 seed. Felt like they got way overseeded. They were a 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament, for gosh sakes. But I think when you're looking at this game, plus 270, plus 300 on the money line, this is where 100% I think you take a shot on the Hurricanes to win outright.
And it is going to be interesting, because with Miami, they've got Malik Reneau, who knows all about the Big Ten from his time over at Indiana, and he has been great for this Miami team. As Rob Donaldson, he's always great on this podcast, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And then I think that this is one of the most interesting games of the day. Right now, St. John's are 3.5-point favorites against Kansas. That totals 144 to 144.5, and it really feels like this is a name brand number, because if you peel off Kansas and you put on their Insert your favorite mid-major here. Insert middling Power 5 conference team here. This line would not be 3.5. I've loved what I've seen out of the St. John's team thus far this season. And for Kansas, they very nearly upchucked a 26-point lead against Cal Baptist. And I want to get your thoughts here because with Kansas, I just haven't loved what I've seen out of them over the last few weeks.
And I mean, is there anything more telling than Darren Peterson? The narrative all season long has been, does he even love basketball, right? Like, he's not playing some games. He's checking himself out in the second half during blowouts. Well, hey, Cal Baptist round one, they had a 24 or whatever, a 20-plus point lead, and all of a sudden it withered away in like 5 minutes. Now, credit to them. They still got out to that initial lead. That does matter. That shows talent. That shows efficiency. But going up against the St. John's team that surprised a lot of people by pressing out the gate against Northern Iowa and just looked like they were very, very dialed in. And especially when you're talking about the whole narrative of Zuby Ejiofor going up against Kansas and Bill Self because they ran him out of the building, is that, hey, we want Hunter Dickinson. That's the player that we want down low, not you, Zuby. And now Zuby gets that chance to rectify or kind of make a statement against his former team. That's going to be a fun thing to watch. And I just feel like when you're looking at St. John's, they were way, way underseeded as a 5. This is more like watching a 3 versus a 4 rather than a 4 versus a 5, or maybe even 3 versus a 3. And because of that, I think St. John's is going to be able to make a serious statement because I think they're the better team. I think they're the most consistent team. And I trust that experience over a guy like a Darren Peterson, which, again, I hate to play in the narrative, just might not be that type of gamer as it pertains to the college level.
Yep, I'm in total agreement with you there. I'm certainly going to be laying the 3.5 with St. John's. I love the Zuby Ejiofor angle there. Unfortunately, for our good friend Mike Francesa, it was not Joel Embiid that was starting over Zuby Ejiofor. It was actually Hunter Dickinson. So I always want to make sure that that is very clear. But you know what? I do love this angle here. And when you've got Slick Rick Pitino, you always have to feel good about that. And something else I think is interesting is that we were over at Circa late on Friday watching the end of that UConn versus Furman game where Terrace Reed had more rebounds than Furman. But as we know, UConn was playing that game short-handed. They might be able to get some reinforcements here against UCLA, but that line is 4.5. It's sort of telling you that UConn might be somewhat 100%, somewhat not 100%. That totals 136.5, 137. I want to get your thoughts here because UCLA blew that cover late against Central Florida with Sky Clark doing Sky Clark things, and for UConn, they had Terrace Reed going to Inferno mode, or else they might have been the big upset of the NCAA tournament.
To come full circle just on this segment, Greg, when I was bringing up the 7, the 10s, the 9s, the 8s, that I feel like because of NIL have really benefited to have a higher floor than ever before. Look at UCLA, right? Sky Clark, Xavier Booker, Donovan Dent, all of the talent that they've accumulated through the portal. It didn't look like it was going to show up to start the season. That was definitive. But that Michigan road trip, when they got ran off the floor by Michigan State, then Michigan, then we got that funny, exchange with the reporter from Mick Cronin. It was like as if it was like the signifying turning point in their year. And now UCLA being the 7th seed, it's justified based on their resume as a season played out. But had they played the same way from that end of that road trip to now, I think we're looking at UCLA as like a 3 or 4 seed potentially if they had lived up to those expectations. And this line opening up at a 4.5, a 5, a 5.5. I feel like this line in particular is distinctively telling. There's no injuries, in terms of kind of the major key pieces, not like a Jefferson where you have a wild card of how they're going to perform. We know how UCLA is going to perform, whether or not Bilodeau even plays. And because of that, UConn, they didn't look that impressive, but I don't think you should read too much into that. I just think this game on its actual face favored UCLA with multiple possessions. And because of that, I'm taking the points. I'm taking the money line, and that might actually be my favorite bet here on Sunday.
And it is going to be really interesting to see what happens because we know that UCLA is whined and complained about the travel, but in this game starts at 5:45 p.m. Pacific time. For the body clock, that's actually not too bad for UCLA, so it actually helps them out. If it were a 9:10 a.m. game Pacific time, that might be hurting them a little bit more. And Rob, you're much like me. You do love the NCAA tournament, obviously, but we've got ourselves some NIT action as well. I know you picked a few winners in the first round. And is there anything on the NIT front for Sunday that's standing out? As we do have 6 games in the 3-letter tournament that are going down.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the NIT slate for Sunday, you have so many fantastic matchups just based on the mid-major entry. Because the thing is, in non-com play, you have mid-majors taking on high majors or mid-majors playing down to like D2 competition. You don't really see the top-end mid-majors schedule each other because there's no real benefit in the net for the most part. And because of that, you have really fantastic matchups of, seeing like a George Washington take on a New Mexico just feels very random, right? You have an Illinois State getting that chance actually against Wake Forest. And because of that, I'm going to signal in on that game. I mean, if you've watched the Redbirds this year, if you've watched Wake Forest, they're very, very similar stylistically because, yeah, they have some bigs, but the bigs kind of almost operate from the mid-range level and they operate from the perimeter as a whole. When you're looking at a 149 number, it feels like a massive, massive discount on the over. Maybe that's a telling line. Maybe this is going to be a clamp down by Wake Forest. But if Illinois State can be any semblance of what they look like in conference play, this could soar into the 160s. So go ahead and give me the over at the start of the day over there at 1:30 Pacific time.
Yep, I do think that is going to be a good one to look at. And I think that St. John's versus Cal game is going to be very interesting as well. That total 148.5, 149.5. St. Joe's has not been average Joe's on defense thus far this season. You're getting 13.5 points with Seattle right now. So we've got a lot of fun ones out there. And just with regards to the broad scope of college basketball, because we are doing this as we don't know the late results on Saturday quite yet, but when it comes bracket-wise, what are you taking a look at for these next few rounds? Do you think that chalk is going to be able to withhold, or do you think that we could see some of these 1 seeds getting picked off and we could see a lot more chaos moving forward?
Well, I think in particular when you're talking about against the spread, a very chalky first round is going to lead a lot of people into the narrative and just the general opinion that, hey, these top-end teams are the definitive top 10 teams. There's clear lines in the sand, and that opens the door for, say, and again, we'll see what TCU Duke looks like, but that was an 11.5-point spread. In normal years, that might be 8.5, but because of the narrative, again, of, hey, favorites covered like crazy, these top-end teams are loaded, NIL has kind of ruined the sport in terms of kind of making it very, very chalky. I think that's going to play a really good benefit when you're talking about the 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 seed lines down the road, 11 seed, and how Texas and VCU do. But I think in particular, those middle seeded teams that have good resumes in the regular season, have definitive talent, I think people are going to be surprised by the amount of upsets that stem from those areas. And last year, we did not see a lot of 1 seeds go down during the round of 32. Be on the lookout, man, because I feel like that's a trend that I just don't see coming to fruition back-to-back years. I do think maybe 1 or 2 1 seeds are in danger here in the round of 32.
I think so as well. I'm really liking Vanderbilt. I'm doing this ahead of knowing whether or not they're going to knock off Nebraska, so hopefully Vanderbilt makes me look good there, but I like their chances of being able to make a run. I do think that we're going to have a little bit of mayhem here, and Rob, I know that you're here for it all. You're doing an amazing job with the Rob's Best Bet Show, Underdog Fantasy, and chilling out here in Las Vegas for the NCAA Tournament here in these next few days, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm doing this out of my hotel room. It's been a fantastic week. And, for those who want to follow my college basketball bets, NIT, NCAA Tournament, Rob DFB on Twitter/X, and my YouTube channel, it will be back. My voice may still be recovering on the next video, but the next video will be about the Sweet 16. It'll be a futures update. It should be a really fun video. And as always, Greg, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for, hanging out with me this week. It's been a great time, and we'll look forward to doing it again probably tonight or maybe the rest of the weekend here.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. And hey, who knew that myself and Rob would be able to make a little bit of money at the tables as well? So that's a little bit of an added bonus right there. Always love that. And Rob, always love getting him aboard on this podcast. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some make
My name's Mackenzie, and I started a GoFundMe for the adoptive mother of a nonverbal autistic child. The mother had lost her job because she wasn't able to find adequate care for this autistic child. So she really needed some help with living expenses, paying some back bills. So I launched a GoFundMe to help support them during this crisis. And we raised about $10,000 within just a couple of months. I think that the surprising thing was by telling a clear story and just really being very clear about what we needed, we had some really generous donations from people who were really moved by the situation that this family was struggling with.
GoFundMe is the world's #1 fundraising platform trusted by over 200 million people. Start your GoFundMe today at GoFundMe.com. That's GoFundMe.com. GoFundMe.com. This podcast is supported by GoFundMe.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights and did so once again today. So a big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we're going to be going with the NCAA Tournament games first. I don't know how they do this order, but it goes with the games in Florida first, and then Pennsylvania, Missouri, and then California, and then we've got 6 NIT games to be able to get to, and those are all in time order, so that's actually nice and easy, and the NCAA Tournament games are not. Again, I have no idea why, but I list the order of the games wherever you're getting this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, list goes on, and on top of that, if you're listening on the old Twitter/X, I list them there as well. So we've got you all covered there. 809, 810 is how we start. Alabama and Texas Tech do battle. Texas Tech anywhere between a 1-point favorite to a 1-point underdog. Depends upon your book. Most places have them as the favorite. Totals between 164.5 to 165.5, and I do like the over. A semi-total at a 167.5. It's a Texas Tech team that has been very good with their three-point shooting. They're shooting just a hair under 39.5% from the outside, top 5 mark in the country, and ever since JT Toppin went down with an injury, they've actually been better on offense with their three-point shooting, as there's a bunch that from three-point range without him is shooting about 41.5%, overall 30th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Bama is gunning it. They are 5th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for this Alabama offense, it has been highly efficient, 6th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and boy, oh boy, do they give it up on defense, who are in 30th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This group takes about 53.7% of their field goal attempts from three-point range as numero uno in all of college basketball, and while Aiden Holloway is out of the fold, that is their number 2 scorer, shooting about 43+% from 3, 16.5 points per contest. You still have 21+ points per game out of LeBaron Filan to be able to bank on. He's been able to shoot about 40% from three-point range. Latrell Wrightsell has been a nice mixer and shaker for this team, 12.5 points. He's been able to shoot about 35.5% from 3, dealt with ailment towards the beginning part of the season. He's been able to build himself back up, and you still do have a little bit of versatility with this team. It is a group that is giving up a lot of second and third chances, but Amari Allen has been able to throw in their 7 rebounds per game. Aiden Sherrell down low, 2.3 blocks, 6.5 rebounds per game, and for Texas Tech, obviously, a team that's not quite the same on the inside with JT Toppin being out of the fold. Good news is Christian Anderson looked pretty 100% in that game against Akron. He is their main facilitator, 19.7 assists, shoots 42% from 3. Donovan Atwell shoots 46% from the outside. Jalen Petty, well, no feeling Petty for him. He's been able to give you 38.5% three-point shooting, about 10 points per contest, and then Lawan Watts, about 11.5 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists per contest. Luke Bogamboy has been able to step up, give you a little bit of something down low. Not quite the same offensive player that JT Toppin is, and I do think that even though this is an Alabama group that has certainly been leaking oil with regards to their offense, they're dealing with the Holloway sort of situation with the way that they've been that efficient on offense. I do think that they get the job done here against a short-handed Texas Tech team. So made Alabama the 1.5 point favorite. I like them as a pick'em / a money line underdog, and I'm in on the over. Semi-total 167.5, 811, 812. You've got Iowa and Florida doing battle, and Florida finds themselves as a double-figure favorite here of 10.5 points. 144.5 to 145.5 is the total, and I do like the over, semi-total 146.5. Absolute tempo war in this game. Florida, one of the more rapid paces in all of college basketball. They are currently clocking in 29th in terms of total possessions per game. Out of 365 Division I teams, Iowa is 365th. And for Iowa, they've been a solid defense this year in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a unit that has been checking in the top 100 in the country, 78th, but they are giving up about 14.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. They feast on generating turnovers. They're a top 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They are outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they're also a really efficient offense. Top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with Bennett Sturts supplying the team with 20 points, shoots 37.5% from 3, and Florida being as vulnerable as they are from the outside. They shoot about 30.8% from 3 outside the top 315 in all of college basketball. They're about 155th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. I think that Iowa's going to be able to hold in there. I did take the points. Davion Banks has stepped up in a big way, give you 10.5 points, shoots 45% from 3-point range, and for this Iowa group, they've been able to do a nice job with their interior offense. They're a top 25 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Now, obviously, Florida is going to have the size advantage, and they are number 1 in the country with regards to overall rebound percentage. Thomas Saad leads away with 17 points, 6 rebounds in terms of a scoring standpoint, but Ruben Chinyelu down low, 11.2 points, 11.5 rebounds per game. Boogie Flanders will give you about 11.5 points per game. Xavier Lee, he's been coming along for the ride. The 3-point shooting with he and Fland, still very, very suspect, to say the least. Both of these guys combined to shoot less than 27% from 3, but between the two of them, you're getting about 23 points per contest. I do think that that's going to help out. And Urban Klausar has been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. I do think that Florida, in the end, gets the job done, but I do think that this Iowa group is going to be able to generate some turnovers. I do think that that's going to be able to keep them lively in this game. And for Iowa, even though they are a very slow and controlled team, with them being able to maximize those possessions, I do think that they hold in this game. So set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Iowa, and I do like the over semi-total at a 146.5. 8-13, 8-14. This is UCLA, and they're going to be playing against UConn. This is out there in the great state of Pennsylvania. UConn is a 4.5-point favorite total on this game, 136.5 to 137.5, and I do like the over. I semi-total at a 142.5. Now, for UConn, they are certainly dealing with some ailments as they were without Silas Demery in game number 1 of the NCAA tournament. That no doubt hurt this team, and additionally, we don't know if they're going to be able to get another one of their ancillary pieces back for this game or not, as Demery is questionable, Jalen Stewart is questionable as well, and that showed through a little bit more on the defensive side of things. Furman, they were able to score 71 points in that game. For UConn, this has been a team that overall has been 15th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 21st in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but got a UCLA team that is shooting 37.9% from 3-point range. It has been a UCLA team that has not really been up-tempo in terms of total possessions per game. They clock in 297th in the country. UConn a little bit faster, 292nd, but both teams relatively slow and controlled. But that said, with UCLA, I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job in terms of holding up in this game. I did set my line at 4.5, so I'm going to be waiting upon a little bit of line movement here. I've seen some 3.5s a little bit earlier. If we can get back down to a 4 or less, that will be my buy point on UConn, despite the injuries, as you do have a guy in Alex Caravan who's been rock solid for the team, and Terrence Reed. And you saw what he was able to do in that game against Furman. 30 points, 27 rebounds. He is just absolutely dominant down low. Caravan, he's got a little bit of versatility at about 6'8", 13 points. He's able to shoot 39% from 3 in UCLA. Outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and it's been a UConn team that's been pretty ordinary with their 3-point shooting at 34.7%, but they're still a top 35 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage as well. Braylon Mullins has been able to come along for the ride for about 12 points per game, and they're probably going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit if Silas Emery was unable to go in this game. Meanwhile, on the flip side for UCLA, they were dealing with a few injuries coming into the tournament as well to Tyler Bilodeau, Donovan Dent. These two guys look like they should be good to go in this game. For Bilodeau, shoots 46% from 3, 17.5 points per game. Dent, 7.5 assists. He does a nice job in keeping things efficient for UCLA. A top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Again, with UCLA not great on the inside. It's even with their own 2-point shooting percentage, or outside the top 175 with that regard as well. But if they need to knock down free throws, they shoot about 76.5% at the free throw line. With having Demery either being out or not being 100%, that should give them some good looks from 3, and I think that helps them remain lively. At a 4 or less, I'm willing to take it with UConn laying the number. 5 or more, I'm going to be taking those points with UCLA, and I do like the over. I set my total at a 142.5. 8-15, 8-16, you've got Tennessee, and they're going to be playing against Virginia. And Virginia does find themselves as a underdog of 1.5 points in most spots. Other places, you're finding them as a pick 'em. 137.5 is the total, and I made Virginia the slim 1.5 point favorite. I do like them here on the money line. It is a Virginia team that has been able to do a pretty rock solid job on defense along Tennessee. Tennessee 36th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but are giving up about 11.2 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Virginia is 35th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've been a little bit better when they've been away from home. You've got a Tennessee team that has been masterful in terms of generating second and third chances. They are number one in terms of offensive rebound percentage, with about 44.6% of their misses becoming an offensive rebound. Virginia is 7th, though, and you've got a pair of guys down low in Jonah Grunlow along with Ogana Onyesu, who have been able to combine for over 5 blocks per contest. That is one of the best shot blocking duos that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Tennessee, they've been a little bit sloppy with the ball. They're outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Jacoby Gillespie gives you 18.5 points, shoots 34% for 3. Nate Amon, he's been a very versatile piece, 17 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. Felix Apara, a block and a half, 6 rebounds per contest. So these guys have been able to do a pretty solid job with that regard. And for JP Estrella, he's been that nice mixer and shaker. 10 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. On the flip side of things, you've got a Virginia team that has been really built around the international man of mystery in Thaddeus Ritter, 15.5 points, 6 boards. He shoots 34% from 3. And Virginia has become a top 55 team with their 3-point shooting percentage at 36.3%. Now, Tennessee back in the top 50 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but Tennessee's a little bit neither here nor there with their own outside shooting, and Virginia's held up really well on the inside. They're a top 10 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage with all the shot blocking, and then you've got Jakari White, who's been able to shoot 45% from 3-point. In a pressure spot, Virginia shoots 73% of the free throw line. That's right around about country average. Tennessee, more around 69.4%. That's outside the top 250. I think that could be a big deciding factor in this game. So I did set Virginia as a 1.5 point favorite. I do like them as a pick'em / a money line underdog, and made my total a 137.5. If we can get down to a 137 or less, which was the opener, do like the over to go along with that money line of Virginia. 817, 818. It is Miami and Purdue doing battle from the great state of Missouri. As for Purdue, they are a 7.5 point favorite total on this game, 147.5 to 148.5. Also set my line at a 7.5. Saw an opener of 7, and 7 is my absolute max lay on Purdue. It is a Purdue team that has been absolutely masterful on offense, number 2 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And for this Purdue team, they actually give up fewer points per possession when they're away from home rather than at home. For Purdue, they're overall 157th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They actually give up 3.1 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. That defense ascends in the top 55 with regard. And for Purdue, they're not necessarily going to grab a ton of second and third chances, but they're still pretty rock solid there. But on defense, they've been able to do a nice job in terms of disallowing second and third chances. Teams are only grabbing 24% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in games played away from home. That is a top 15 mark in the country. And for Miami, they have been menaces on the glass. They are 10th in the country with regards to overall rebound percentage, with Malika Renew being able to renew things for this Miami team, as he's been supplying about 19 points, 6.5 boards, and does shoot 36% from 3. Trey Donaldson is up there shooting 36% from the outside. Miami overall is a top 40 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. They will give it up a little bit on the inside, though. They're outside the top 125 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and where Purdue is going to need to get this Miami team is from the outside, as this is a Miami team that has been giving up a lot of good looks from 3-point range overall for the season. This Miami team, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they check in right around about 274th in the country. Games played away from home, teams shoot 36.4% from 3-point range against them, and while Purdue is overall 184th in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 34%, goes down to 32.1% away from home. And additionally, for this Miami team, they don't want to go to the free throw line. They shoot 68.1% of the free throw line. That is a bottom 45 mark in the country. Meanwhile, you got Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, a pair of guys that have played in a national title before, currently combined for 28.1 points per contest between the two of them, shooting about 40% from 3. You've got CJ Cox, who's able to shoot 37% from the outside, 8.5 points per game. And even though he doesn't give you a ton of minutes, Daniel Jacobson is a guy that stands over 7 feet tall, gives you a little bit over a block per contest. Trey Kaufman-Wren has been able to give you 8.5 rebounds. Oscar Clough, 7.5 rebounds per game. Now for Purdue, they are going to give up some looks on the inside. They're outside the top 240 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that this defense is going to be able to hold up away from home. For Purdue, willing to lay up to 7 with them and not a half a point less. It is a Purdue team that's looking to play relatively slowly in terms of total possessions per game. They are 338th in the country. Miami, more of a mid-tempo team / a slightly up-tempo team at 161st in terms of total possessions per game. Made a total of a 149.5, so like the over, and willing to lay up to 7 with Purdue. 8+ becomes my buy point on Miami. 819, 820, it is Kentucky, and they're going to be playing against Iowa State. Also out there from the great state of Missouri, as Kentucky is a 4.5 to a 5.5 point dog total on this game, 145.5 to 146.5. I made Iowa State just a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, in a normal spot, I probably would lay this number with Iowa State. I think the Joshua Jefferson injury is really rough. If he plays at all in this game, he's going to be nowhere near 100%. And that's really the lifeblood of this team. He does a little bit of everything. An All-American candidate, 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, 4.8 assists, shoots 34.5% from three. Now, Milan Mimicevic is really your main dynamo from the outside. Shoots 49.4% from three, 17 points per game. And you still have the quarterback of the defense, Simon Lipsky, 13 points, 2.2 assists per game for an Iowa State team that has a lot of balance. They're so fourth in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they've got a lot of that firepower out there in the backcourt, and this has been a team that has been a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 15th to be exact, fourth in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Jefferson has his fingerprints all over that. Got a Kentucky team that does a pretty solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, 68th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. We all know what Ortega Owe is able to do late in the game with the fact that he saved Kentucky's season in that first round game against Santa Clara. 18.5 points, 4.5 boards, shoots 34% from three, and the ref's not calling a timeout, save them as well, just saying, but that said, Colin Chandler, he's able to give you about 10 points, shoots 41% from 3 points for a Kentucky team that's been able to do an okay job on the glass. They're a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. Iowa State, surprisingly, has become a top 40 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, but again, Jefferson was that top rebounder. That's going to impact them a little bit, and this is a Kentucky team that is in the top 100 with opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, their own 2-point shooting percentage, with them being able to take care of the ball. I think that that's going to keep them lively against an Iowa State team that I think that they're going to have some struggles here without Joshua Jefferson, and even if he does play again, not going to be fully 100%, set a total of a 146, so we'll take the points here with Kentucky, and between a 145.5 to a 146.5, mostly seeing 145.5, would rather have that 145.5 to the over. 821, 822 out there in San Diego. You've got St. John's taking on Kansas. Kansas is a underdog of 3.5 points. 144 to 144.5 is the total. I'm laying it with St. John's. I did set them as a 5.5 point favorite. Now, both of these defenses are very rock solid. Kansas, they're about 32nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. St. John's is 9th, and this is a St. John's team that has been able to do a really supreme job in terms of guarding the outside. They're allowing teams to shoot 31.1% from 3-point, and they're much better in terms of generating turnovers. For Kansas, just 339th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. St. John's is 53rd, and I think that Zuby Ejiofor is going to be the best low-post player in this game. Now, Flory Badunga has been great. 9+ boards, 2.5 blocks per contest for Kansas, but you got Zuby Ejiofor going up against his old team with a chip on his shoulder, 2.2 blocks, 7.5 boards, about 16.5 points per game, and I recognize that this is a St. John's team that doesn't go into flamethrower mode from 3-point at 33.3%, and for Kansas, they've been able to do a pretty rock-solid job on the glass, but for St. John's, they're the much better team in terms of grabbing second and third chances. In terms of percentage of their missed shots, that result in an offensive rebound, 37th in the country. Kansas is 197th, and Kansas has just been lackluster on offense. 143rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Kansas does a relatively solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, but I mean, for this Kansas team, even though you've got a St. John's team that really doesn't have a true point guard, they do a solid job as well. They're a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Matter of fact, they commit fewer turnovers per possession than this Kansas team. Has Darren Peterson, great name. He's been able to shoot about 38% from three, 20 points per game, but it feels like sometimes it's just a volume shooter. You've got Trey White, who's been able to give you 14 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 41% from three. Marco Jackson just hasn't been able to give you too much. Actually shoots 37% from three, but only about 5 points per game. They really lean heavily on Melvin Council and his versatility with about 12.5 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, but I do think that with St. John's being able to put this Kansas team under duress, with Kansas not being able to place any ball pressure themselves, I do think that for St. John's, they do find a way to be able to get the job down here and keep this total under. Semi-total 141.5, like the under, and I'm a little life to 5 with St. John's. This is the last NCAA tournament game, and then we're going to hit the NIT games, 823, 824. Utah State and Arizona do battle. Arizona's an 11.5 to a 12.5 point favorite. 154.5 to 155.5 is the total. Semi-line at 9.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Utah State. They do a really good job in terms of generating turnovers on the road. Utah State, 4th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis in a road/inch-core venue. Now, Arizona just so put together. They are 9th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 5th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. No true weaknesses for the team, and Utah State gonna give it up a little bit from 3-point range. They are outside the top 175 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 43.3%. But that said, when it comes to this Arizona team, they're a top 40 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from inside the 3-point line, and Utah State has been really good down low. On offense, they're a top 11 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. On defense, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they've done a nice job holding up there, being 51st in the country. Now, Arizona, they themselves are very good on the inside. They are second in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Braden Burries is able to give you 15-plus points per game. He has been a very improved player, but now you have to match up with Mason Fosloff, along with them, Jay Collins, a pair of guys that are combining for about 33 points per game between the two of them. They shoot 38% from three. You've had Fosloff be able to throw in there 2 steals, 3 assists per contest. Drake Allen gives you multiple steals, 4.5 assists per game for a Utah State team that has also been a top 100 team in terms of protecting the ball. On the flip side for Arizona, Koa Pete, you know that he's going to be able to give you a little bit of this and that. Really doesn't bomb it from 3-point range, but he gives you 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists per game. Jane Bradley is really the guy that you rely upon along with Anthony Del Rosso to be able to shoot from 3. As Del Rosso from 3-point range, he's been able to shoot about 32% from 3, but it's been much better here down the stretch with about 9 points per game. Bradley is shooting 40% for 3, but takes fewer than 2 threes per game, 13 points per contest. It's an Arizona team that has been solid in terms of taking care of the ball, right around about 100th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and the rest for all getting to the free throw line. Arizona, a top 15 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, but I do think that with the way that Utah State is able to generate those turnovers, how strong they are around the outside, that keeps them lively in this game, and I do think that both defenses hold up here. Semi-total 153.5, like the under, animal, take 10 plus here with Utah State, and now we hit the NIT games. It starts with 8:25, 8:26. Wake Forest is going to be playing us to Illinois State. Illinois State, an underdog of 7.5 points, and so on this game, it is 149.5, and I made Illinois State the underdog of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Illinois State. This has been a very strong defense, 42nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And then they're also 11th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentages. Teams are grabbing in terms of percentage of missed shots as an offensive rebound, only about 23.1% of them. Meanwhile, you've got a Wake Forest team that has really struggled on the inside, 276th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're allowing opponents to grab 31.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is 312th in the nation, and overall, they are 220th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So that has been absolutely brutal for them. For Wake Forest, they dealt with the Nate Kelmezi injury as well. That impacted the backcourt. So Juke Harris has had to do a bit of everything, and he's been very good. He's been supplying the team with 21.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots about 33% from 3. Trayvon Spillers, Miles Colvin, these two guys are combined to shoot about 36% from 3-point range. But I mean, outside of that, you don't have a lot of guys that inspire a ton of confidence. Cooper Schwieger was a little bit of a disappointment, only giving the team about 5 points per contest, and for Illinois State, I was thinking that Johnny Kinzinger was going to have a better year from the outside. Only shoots about 30 to 31% from 3, but still has been effective for the team. 11 points, 3.5 assists per contest. It's an Illinois State team that is a top 100 team with both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Not going to reel in a lot of second and third chances for themselves, but Chase Walker down low held his own, 13.5 points, 5 boards, shoots about 32% from 3, and then your ancillary guys, Bowden Skunberg, along Tyree Coleman, they combined shoot about 41.5% from 3 with 20 points per contest. So I do think that Illinois State going to be able to hold up in this game for Illinois State. It's been a little bit of a lower tempo team this season as well. In terms of total possessions per game, this team checks in right around about 252nd in all of college basketball. Wake Forest, a little bit more up tempo at 112th, but they've been slowing down with all the injuries. So set a total of 147.5. I'm willing to take the points here with Illinois State, and I do like this total under as well. 827, 828. Seattle is on the road against Auburn. Auburn is a 13.5 point favorite, so it's 146.5. You're going to have a just battle of styles, as this is a Seattle team that's not been able to get anything going on offense. They're outside the top 280 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This Auburn team, they have been a really good offense in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Auburn right now, they're checking in 33rd in the country, but Seattle 16th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 6th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and I think the Seattle defense holds up. I set them as an 8.5 point dog. I'm going to be willing to take the points for Auburn. The lifeblood of this team is getting to the free throw line. They are 4th in terms of free throws attempted on a per play basis, and they are going up against a Seattle team that is 31st in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis away from them. So I think that they're going to get fewer trips to the free throw line. Bray Maldonado has been a nice headliner for this Seattle team. 14.5 points, shoots 37% from 3-point range. You have outside of that, not a lot of outside shooting. John Christophel shoots about 38% for 3, but only gives you about 6 points per contest. But John Sakio, good versatility there, 12 points, 4 boards. Will Hembright, 2.5 blocks, a little bit over a steal, 12.5 points per game. And it's an Auburn group that has been much better with regards to their interior defense rather rather than their perimeter play. As Hodge Pettiford has just been a little bit of a disappointment, 15.5 points, only shooting about 29.5% from 3-point. Kashawn Murphy, apparently he's not playing here in the NIT, and that's their top rebounder with 6.8 rebounds per game. Now, Kashawn Hall, he's their best player by far. 20 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 38% from 3-point. She's all good to go, along Kevin Overton, who shoots about 40% from 3-point. But Auburn, they shoot about 34% from 3. That's country average. They're inside the top 130 with their 2-point shooting percentage, but not necessarily superb there. This is a team that they very much rely upon second and third chances in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. It's an Auburn team that's been ranking in the top 30 in all of college basketball there, and this is not necessarily a Seattle team that's going to be batting down the hatches with regards to their low post play, but I think that Seattle's going to be able to hold up here. They're a top 200 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage, and it has been an Auburn team that, again, they've really given it up on the defensive glass as well. They're allowing teams to grab about 29% of their misses as an offensive rebound, to run 14th in the country. Think that Seattle holds up with their defense, so like the under, sub I total 142.5, and won't take the points. Set them as a underdog of 8.5 points. 829, 830. UNLV is going to be playing on the road against Tulsa. Tulsa is a favorite of 4.5 points. 161.5 is the total. I do like the under. I did set my total at a 158.5. You've got UNLV team as looking to bust it. They are 61st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Tulsa group that is 116th in terms of total possessions per game. A little bit of a warp stat, though. That game against Stephen F. Austin goes to overtime. If you're looking at possessions in terms of every 40 minutes, they're probably closer to about 130th in the country. And it's a Tulsa team has been great on offense. They are 6th in 3-point shooting percentage at 39%, 13th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and UNLV is giving it up from 3-point. In games played away from home, teams shoot 36.8% for 3, 303rd in all of college basketball, but UNLV's games have quite a few dead possessions as well. 221st in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and then defensively in games played away from home, top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn has been tremendous for this UNLV team with about 20 points per game, shoots 42% from 3-point. Kamari Hamilton gives you versatility with about 13 points, 5 boards. He's shooting about 35% from 3. Pretty much alone 2 guys on the roster, though, that shoot above 31% from 3. Tyron Jones has been able to give you 2 blocks per contest, as UNLV has been a top 30 team with regards to shot block percentage. Meanwhile, for this Tulsa group, they do the little things well. They're one of the best free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. They shoot over 78% as collective top 20 mark in the country. They have that 3-point shooting, but they're also a top 75 team with their 2-point shooting percentage with a nice trio of guys. Miles Barnstable, 89% free throw shooter, 41% from the outside, 14.5 points per game. David Green, 16 points. He shoots 40% for 3. Tylen Riley, 40% 3-point shooter, 15 points, 4.3 assists per contest. It's a Tulsa team that it's not going to put you under too much duress. They're about to earn 50th with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Haven't been bad on the glass, though. They've been a top 35 team with regards to overall rebound percentage. This is despite the fact that they don't necessarily have that one like menace down low. Tyler Barron has been your top rebounder with about 5.1 rebounds per game, but someone like Kanade Pupla has been able to give you about 4 rebounds per game. Ian Schmeichel throws in their 3.5 boards. So a lot of guys are just doing their part, and I do think that for Tulsa, they find a way to get the job done against a UNLV team that's not been great with a perimeter defense. Up by total 158.5. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Tulsa. 831, 832. Our nation's first president, George Washington, on the road against New Mexico. New Mexico is a favorite of 7.5 points. 161.5 is the total, and I like the over. I set my total 162.5. It's a New Mexico team that's actually been one of your best over teams in all of college basketball. This despite the fact that the defense has been relatively solid for them. New Mexico is fast, but not warp speed fast. 109th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. George Washington is 120th, and this has been a George Washington group that certainly has been giving up a lot of second and third chances outside the top 115 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now, George Washington away from home has been an absolutely tremendous team on offense. In roadside neutral court games, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this team checks in the top 35 in all of college basketball, overall 45th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for New Mexico, they're about 57th in the country in terms of points per possession, with Jake Hall being able to lead the way. He shoots over 42% from 3-point, supplying the team within that neighborhood, about 16 points per contest. And then Tomislav Bujan down low, 12.5 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. Love what he brings to the table. It's a New Mexico team that's been shooting about 36.5% from 3, top 55 mark in the country, and they really shut it down from 3-point. They're a team that ranks in the top 25 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They will give it up on the inside, though. They're outside the top 235 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And I mean, it's a George Washington team that has been a solid 3-point shooting team, not necessarily an amazing 3-point shooting team, and their bread is really buttered down low, with Rafael Castro being able to give you 8+ boards, a block and a half, a steal plus per contest, 15+ points per game for George Washington. You look at their 2-point shooting percentage in games played away from home, it is in the top 25 in all of college basketball. And then you just have a whole greater than some of its parts approach with this George Washington team, as you got Trey Autry, Garrett Johnson, both give you about 11.5 points per game. Autry is able to shoot about 39% from three. Tyrone Marshall gives you about 9 points, 5 rebounds. Luke Hunger is able to give you about 5 boards per contest. So all these guys do a really nice job working in tandem. George Washington also a top 75 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage as well. So I do think that George Washington going to do a relatively solid job holding in this game, and I do think that this is going to be close enough for late fellas. So I'm going to be in on the over. So I told 162.5. Maybe my line 6.5, so we'll take 7+ here with George Washington. 833, 834, Wichita State. They're going to be on the road against Oklahoma State. Cowboys are a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 163.5 to 164.5. Maybe my line 2. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Wichita State. This is a Wichita State team that has been a relatively mid-tempo team in terms of total possessions per game. They're in that neighborhood, about 150th in the country. Now, Oklahoma State is absolutely looking to gun it out of 365 Division I teams, 9th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they are going to be without a few main pieces from an offense that was 94th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, you knew that Parsa Fala was going to be out. He missed the last 5 games of the regular season. He's dealing with ailment, and he was really your top rebounder for this team. 14.5 points, 6 boards, and was shooting about 40% from 3-pointers, but we did not see Anthony Roy in that first NIT game either. It seems like his season is just done after he was leading the way with 17 points per game. That means that you're now relying upon Victorious Miller along Kanye Cleary, who've been able to combine for about 21.5 points per game. Between the two of them, they shoot about 35% from 3-point, but I do think that Wichita State is going to have a really nice edge on the glass. It's an Oklahoma State team that has been outside the top 125 with regards to overall rebound percentage. And Wichita State, they grab over 36% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound away from home. Top 5 mark in the country. Keenan Giles is now going to be the top scorer in this game with Anthony Roy out of the fold. He's been shooting 38% from 3. CO.5, 19 points per game. The Berg, Will Berg, 8.5 points, 8 boards, block and a half per contest. Now, Wichita State, not necessarily the greatest shooting team in the world. They're outside the top 260 with their 2-point shooting percentage, but all the second and third chances add up only about 68.6%. The free throw line that hovers right around 300th in the country, but Wichita State maximizes possessions, top 80 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Oklahoma State has been outside the top 150, and for Wichita State, this has been a really rock-solid defense. Not a team that's really going to generate a lot of turnovers, but they just don't give you good looks in general. It's Wichita State, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 38th in the country. They're also in the top 50 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, they do find themselves in the top 60 with that regard, and I do think that that defense holds up, especially with Roy currently being out of the fold for Oklahoma State. So semi-line 2, willing to take the points with Wichita State, made a total of a 162, so also in on the under, and we wrap things up with 835, 836. St. Joe's, they open up the average Joe's on the road against Cal. California is a 5.5 to a 6-point favor, 148.5 to 149.5 is the total. I like the under. I saw my total at a 145. Cal's about 96th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. St. Joe's quite a bit slower at 214th, and for St. Joe's, this has been an offense that has been lackluster, 244th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but this is a very good group in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line, and on the inside, also in the top 60 with regards to both opponents' 2-point shooting percentage and a top 40 team in terms of shot block percentage, with Justice Asia-Moore really being able to lead that charge. About 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but he gives you 2 blocks per game. You've had Jaden Glover step up in a big way. They lost their top scorer in non-conference playing Deuce Jones, and he's really become the main man. Give you 16 points, shoots 36% from 3. Really the only other guy in the roster that shoots above 30% from 3, Austin Wolford, at 34.5% from the outside, 8 points per game for a St. Joe's team that's outside the top 325 with their 3-point shooting percentage at 30.8%, but they will give themselves a few second and third chances, or in the top 150 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, with this year Haskins gave you about 6 boards, 10.5 points per game. Derek Simpson, 5 boards, 5 assists, 13.5 points per game, so they've been able to do a nice job there. The one thing that St. Joe's does not do, they don't put you under duress, and this has been a Cal team that has done the little things really well. At the free throw line, they shoot 78.3%, top 20 mark in the country. They've been a top 100 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Not going to give themselves second and third chances. Cal's outside the top 270 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, and just in terms of overall rebound percentage, are outside the top 225 there. Lone guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Lee Dort, 8 points, 7.8 rebounds, and a block per contest, so he's been solid there, but you do have some quality 3-point shooting, as this is a team that as a whole, they shoot 36.7% from the outside. That's a top 40 mark in the country. You've had a guy in Chris Bell be really versatile at 40% from the outside, 14 points per contest. John Camden, Day-Day Ames, they've been able to combine for about 31 points per game and 38.5% 3-point shooting. I do think that with St. Joe's, they're just not going to be able to generate enough offensively to be able to get the job done, and with the way that Cal has been able to shoot so well at the free throw line, I think that this is going to be close enough for late fellas. I do think that they get the cover at the free throw line, though to the credit of St. Joe's. top 35 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. I think that keeps you under sub by total 145.5, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Cal. Made them a 7-point favorite, and that'll wrap things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the Shoes Life podcast, Rob's Best Bets, for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind the letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, picks and analysis on every game, every day, and once the season ends, we look forward to next season, and this will be a podcast that, much like in past years, I will be running this every single day throughout the offseason, so have no fear there, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.